Let all the thoughts of the day begin to fade like clouds drifting by, leaving behind a clear, quiet sky, and in that sky a single, gentle story begins to appear, a story that begins in a place of marble and murmur, a city known as Rome. As you begin to settle, just one gentle thought. If this space feels like a comfort to you, you might consider a soft tap on the like or subscribe button, but only if that thought feels as effortless as a quiet breath. Your rest is what truly matters, and if you feel like it, you can leave a quiet comment telling me what city you're listening from, and what time it is, there, in your part of the world. It's always nice to know where these stories land. And now, with the lights turned down low, and your body feeling heavy and warm, let's simply close our eyes and arrive at the beginning of our journey. The light is changing. It's that particular time of day in the city. The moment that the Romans call crepusculum, twilight. The sharp, unforgiving glare of the afternoon sun has softened, melting into a warm wash of apricot and rose that spills over the 7 hills. You're walking, and the stone beneath your sandals are still radiating the day's heat, a pleasant warmth that travels up through the soles of your feet. You pull your pillar, the soft woolen shawl draped over your tunic, just a little closer, not because you're cold, but because it's a gesture of enclosure, a small way of creating your own private space amidst the beautiful, relentless chaos of the street. And it is chaotic. Rome is a city that never really learned the meaning of an inside voice. The air is thick with a symphony of sounds. You can hear the rhythmic thump-thump of a baker kneading dough for tomorrow's bread, the sound echoing from the open front of his shop. A little further down, a merchant is loudly proclaiming the unbeatable quality of his Egyptian lentils, his voice a melodic drone that you've heard 1,000 times before. Children, released from their lessons, are shouting and laughing, their game of knucklebones spilling from a doorway onto the pavement. You have to sidestep to avoid them, a smile touching your lips. The smell of the city is just as complex. There's a savory scent of roasting meat from a nearby thermopolium, a fast food counter serving hot meals to people whose homes lack a proper kitchen. This mingles with the sharp, sweet smell of wine, a hint of which always seems to be in the air, perhaps from a spilled amphora or simply the breath of a passerby. Underlying it all is the constant, earthy smell of wood smoke and the slightly acrid tang from the city's drainage system, a system that was an engineering marvel for its time. But let's be honest, it was still a work in progress. You glance up at the buildings that tower over you. These are the famous insule, the apartment blocks of Rome. They rise 6, sometimes 7 stories high, a jumble of timber frames and brick that seems to lean in towards the narrow street, almost close enough to touch the building opposite. From the open, unglazed windows, you can see the flicker of oil lamps being lit, casting moving shadows on the walls within. You know that these buildings are a notorious fire hazard, a fact that keeps the city's fire brigade, the vigiles, constantly on alert. You've seen them on their nightly patrols, with their ladders and buckets and rudimentary water pumps, a comforting presence in the darker hours. For now, though, the insule are just homes, hives of activity, each window a tiny stage where a private life is unfolding. On the plastered walls at street level, there's a tapestry of graffiti, political slogans, advertisements for gladiatorial games, declarations of love, and crude jokes are all scrawled on top of one another. You pass one that reads, "Seconder says his prima is a goddess." A little further, someone has simply drawn a caricature of a local politician with donkey ears. Historians, centuries from now, will argue endlessly about this. Does this graffiti mean almost everyone could read and write? Or was it the work of a small, literate group expressing themselves publicly? The truth, you suspect, is somewhere in the messy, human middle. You are almost home. Your steps are lighter now, carrying you away from the most crowded thoroughfares and into a slightly quieter, more residential district. The noise begins to recede, replaced by the gentle murmur of domestic life. You can hear the soft strains of a lyre being plucked somewhere nearby. A simple, searching melody. The air here smells more of blooming jasmine and baking bread, and less of the marketplace. The day is ending. The city is singing its evening song. And you are ready to leave the public performance of the street behind and retreat into the quiet comfort of your own world. The heavy wooden door of your own home is just ahead. You push the door open, its familiar weight swinging inward with a soft groan, and step across the threshold. Immediately, the world changes. You are no longer in the public sphere of Rome. You have entered the sanctuary of the domus. Your home. The sounds of the street are instantly muffled, replaced by a profound and welcome quiet. You find yourself in a short, dark passageway. The affair you see as all doors of the house. On the floor, a mosaic of a chained dog guards the entrance, with the word CAVECINEM, beware of the dog, spelled out in black tiles. It's a classic for a reason. A bit of ancient Roman humor that serves a very practical purpose. You walk through the passageway and emerge into the heart of the home. The atrium. This is the main hall. A large, airy space that is the first grand statement of the house. Your eyes are drawn upwards to the open square in the roof. The compel UVIUM. Through it, you can see the sky, which has now deepened to a velvety indigo. The first star just beginning to prick the darkness. Directly below the opening is the impel UVIM. A shallow rectangular pool sunk into the floor. Its surface is perfectly still, mirroring the patch of sky above. In the day, it catches rainwater, which is then stored in an underground cistern. Right now, it's a basin of pure, cool tranquility. The air in here is noticeably cooler and smells of damp earth and stone. The rooms of the house open off this central hall. To your left and right are the cubicula. The small, simple bedrooms, most of them little more than windowless alcoves with a bed. Straight ahead, at the far end of the atrium, is the tablinum, the master's study. It's a space that is both public and private. During the day, your husband would receive his clients and business associates here. The large opening to the atrium ensuring everyone could see him at work, a symbol of his respectable, open dealings. Curtains could be drawn for privacy, but they rarely were. The family's wealth and history would be on display here in the form of wax masks of ancestors. The images stored in small wooden cabinets. To look upon them was to be reminded of your lineage, your duties, your place in the great chain of Roman society. But you don't turn towards any of these rooms. Instead, you walk along the side of the impel UVIM, your sandals making a soft, slapping sound on the mosaic floor. You pass through a narrow corridor, and the house opens up again into its most private and precious space, the peristyle. This is a colonnade garden, a secret world of green hidden within the walls of your home. A covered walkway, supported by elegant painted columns, runs around all four sides of a small, open courtyard. The Romans, it must be said, loved bringing the outdoors in. This was their version of a backyard, a concept that simply didn't exist for most city dwellers. It was a true luxury. Here, the quiet is even deeper. The only sounds are the gentle splashing of a small fountain at the center of the garden and the whisper of evening air rustling the leaves of the plants. You breathe in the scent of damp soil, fragrant roses. In the shop, clean smell of bay laurel. A slave is quietly moving through the garden, watering the potted herbs with a clay jug. He nods at you respectfully but doesn't speak, understanding that this is a place of peace. You see pots of rosemary, thyme, and mint, all used for cooking, but also for their supposed medicinal properties. It was common for the mistress of a large house to have a detailed knowledge of herbalism, a first line of defense against common ailments. A little sprig of mint crushed and steeped in hot water could settle an uneasy stomach. A poultice of comfrey could soothe a bruise. You trail a hand along one of the columns as you walk. The plaster is cool and smooth, painted with delicate frescoes of birds and trailing vines, designed to make the small garden feel larger and more lush than it really is. Some of the wealthiest Romans had massive, elaborate gardens at their country villas. But here in the city, this small, perfect courtyard is your escape. It's a place to think, to breathe, to simply be. You stop and look up at the painted walls. Some of these frescoes are purely decorative, but others tell stories from mythology. There's a small, charmingly rendered scene of Daphne turning into a laurel tree to escape Apollo. It's a beautiful piece of art, but it also carries a strange little detail that modern scholars still find puzzling. The artist has painted a tiny, almost hidden snail at the base of the tree. Why? Is it just a random flourish? A private symbol for the painter or the patron? Or does it have some deeper allegorical meaning that has been lost to time? The debate continues in quiet, academic circles, but for you, it's just a familiar quirk, a part of the scenery of your life. For now, you are content. You have shed the dust and noise of the city. You are wrapped in the quiet embrace of your home, in this garden that is a testament to order, beauty, and privacy. You listen to the fountain, watch the sky darken, and feel the day's tensions slowly begin to dissolve. Tonight, there is a banquet to attend, but for this brief, perfect moment, there is only stillness. The quiet interlude in the garden doesn't last forever. Soon, the household begins to stir with a different kind of energy. A low hum of preparation. A slave girl comes to find you, letting you know that it's time to get ready. The banquet tonight is at the home of a senator whose political fortunes are on the rise, and an invitation is both an order and a command. You retreat to your cubiculum, the small bedroom, where your finest clothes have been laid out for you on the bed. The room is simple, illuminated by a single flickering oil lamp that casts long, dancing shadows on the walls. With the help of your personal slave, you begin the ritual of dressing. You slip out of your practical day tunic and into a stole, a long, sleeveless dress that is the mark of a respectable married woman. It's made of fine, almost translucent silk, dyed a deep, rich purple with a substance derived from sea snails. It's an extravagant color, a visible symbol of your family's status. The process is a bit fussy. The garment is pleated and draped just so, then fastened at the shoulders with ornate gold brooches called fibulae. Another slave is tasked with your hair, a complex arrangement of braids and curls piled high on your head, secured with ivory pins. It's a style that takes a long time to create and is not, you reflect, particularly comfortable. Once you and your husband are ready, you don't walk to the senator's house. That would be unthinkable for an occasion like this. Instead, you are carried. You step outside to find a litter, electrica, waiting for you. It's essentially a portable couch with curtains, carried on the shoulders of 4 strong, uniformed slaves. You settle onto the cushion, your husband beside you, and the curtains are drawn. The journey begins. Peeking through a small gap in the fabric, you see the city lights slide by. The jostle of the crowd now a distant, muffled reality. Arriving by litter is all about making an entrance, about floating above the grime and noise of the street. You arrive at the senator's domus, which is much grander than your own. Torches flicker brightly on either side of the entrance, and the sound of music, a lyre and a flute playing a lively tune, spills out into the street. A servant takes your cloaks and another offers you a basin of scented water to wash your hands. You are then laid into the triclinium, the dining room. The room is breathtaking. The walls are covered in elaborate frescoes depicting scenes from Greek myths. The colors vibrant in the light of dozens of bronze oil lamps. At the centerpiece of the room is the arrangement of 3 large couches set in a U-shape around a central table. This is the classic Roman dining setup. There are no chairs. You, your husband, and the other 7 guests will spend the entire evening reclining. You find your assigned spot on one of the couches, leaning on your left elbow, your feet angled away from the table. It's a posture that looks relaxed but actually requires a certain amount of core strength to maintain for hours. Historians will later debate whether Roman women always reclined with the men, or if in earlier, More conservative times, they sat upright in chairs. For your time, in this wealthy, fashionable circle, reclining is the norm. The food begins to arrive. A seemingly endless parade of dishes. This isn't just dinner. It's a performance. The first course, the gustatorio, is meant to whet the appetite. There are eggs, olives, and salads dressed in garum, the infamous fermented fish sauce that Romans put on everything. You see a particularly strange dish. Dormice, fattened in clay pots, then baked and drizzled with honey and poppy seeds. It's considered a great delicacy, though you find the appeal limited. You politely take one and nibble, focusing on the honey. The main course, the cena, is even more extravagant. A whole roasted boar is brought out on a massive platter, and a specially trained slave, a carpentier, carves it with theatrical, dance-like gestures. There are fish dishes swimming in complex sauces, fowl of all kinds, and exotic vegetables you can't even name. Wine, mixed with water in a large crater, flows freely, served by young, handsome slaves. The conversation is as rich as the food. The men talk politics, business, and the latest news from the provinces. The women discuss their children, the price of silk, and the scandalous behavior of a certain consul's wife. It's all very civilized. But underneath the pleasantries, there's a constant, subtle jockeying for status and influence. Every compliment has a double meaning. Every question is a gentle probe for information. As the evening wears on and the wine flows, the atmosphere loosens. The conversation becomes louder, the laughter more frequent. A poet is brought in to recite his latest work, a dramatic ode to the goddess Venus. Later, a troupe of acrobats performs in the small space in the center of the room, their bodies twisting in impossible ways. It's a feast for all the senses, a carefully orchestrated display of wealth, culture, and power. You eat and drink, you laugh and talk, you watch the entertainment, you are performing your role perfectly, that of the charming, respectable wife of an important man. But even as you smile and sip your watered wine, you feel a small, almost imperceptible shift within you, a slight heaviness. A faint warmth that isn't from the wine or the crowded room. It's nothing, really. A trick of the flickering light. The richness of the food. You dismiss it, turning your attention back to the senator's wife, who is now telling a very amusing story. For tonight, you are here, in this world of flickering lamps and overflowing abundance, and everything is perfectly fine. The journey home in the litter feels different. The boisterous energy of the party has faded, leaving a quiet hum in its place. The rhythmic sway of the portable couch, which felt so stately on the way there, now feels slightly lulling, almost soporific. You lean your head against the cushions, the elaborate hairstyle feeling heavy and tight. Through the gap in the curtains, the moonlit streets of Rome slide past like a silent film. The city is much quieter now. The boisterous crowds replaced by the solitary figures of the night watchman and the occasional scurry of a stray cat. Back in the familiar quiet of your own domus, the process of undressing is a welcome relief. The heavy stole is lifted off, the tight fibula unclasped. The real liberation comes when your slave carefully removes the ivory pins from your hair, and the complex structure of braids and curls tumbles down your back. You run your fingers through your freed hair, a simple, satisfying sensation. You slip into a simple linen night tunic, the fabric soft and cool against your skin. Your husband is already asleep in his own small cubiculum across the atrium. In many Roman households of your class, this is quite common. Separate sleeping quarters offered a bit of privacy and comfort. You lie down on your bed, a simple wooden frame with a mattress stuffed with wool or feathers. The room is dark, the only light a faint silver rectangle cast on the floor from the compel. UVIUM in the distant atrium. The house is still, save for the gentle gurgle of the peristyle fountain in the distant, almost imperceptible sounds of a city settling into sleep. You close your eyes, expecting sleep to take you quickly. But it doesn't. You lie there, floating in the quiet darkness, your mind replaying scenes from the banquet, the taste of the honey-glazed dormouse, the sight of the acrobat bending backwards, the sound of the senator's booming laugh. And you feel it again, that same sensation from the party, a faint, internal warmth, a subtle, deep-seated ache in your lower belly. It's not pain, not yet. It's more like a quiet announcement. A messenger arriving from a distant province of your own body with news you don't yet understand. You shift your position, turning onto your side. Then you're back. You tell yourself it's indigestion. The bar was very rich. The wine, even watered down, was plentiful. It's a perfectly logical explanation. You've had indigestion before. It feels different. This has a weight to it, a persistence that feels unfamiliar. You place a hand on your abdomen, as if the physical pressure could soothe or explain the sensation. The skin is warm, but no warmer than usual. The feeling is deeper inside, a low, steady pulse of discomfort. You try to focus on your breathing, a technique you use to calm your mind. Inhale, exhale. You listen to the quiet rhythm of the house. But the internal sensation is a counter rhythm, a faint but insistent dissonance in the familiar harmony of your own body. It's like hearing a single, slightly off-key instrument in an otherwise perfect orchestra. Once you've noticed it, you can't unnotice it. The hours creep by. The patch of moonlight on the floor slowly moves, tracing the silent passage of the night. You drift in and out of a light, restless sleep. But the feeling is always there when you surface into consciousness, a quiet companion in the dark. When the first grey light of dawn begins to filter into the atrium, painting the world in shades of charcoal and silver, you know the night is over. You sit up, swinging your legs over the side of the bed. The ache is still there. It hasn't grown worse, but it hasn't gone away either. It has settled in, and as you look at the pale morning light, a new feeling joins it, a small, cold knot of worry. This isn't just the lingering ghost of a rich meal. This is something else, something new. In this stark, honest light of morning, you can no longer ignore the faint, undeniable signal your body is sending you. Something, somewhere inside, is not right. This is a moment that is both universal and deeply personal. It's the subtle shift from blissful ignorance to quiet concern. Historians can document plagues and epidemics. They can describe surgical procedures and medical theories. But this feeling, this private, internal reckoning in the quiet of a dawning day, this is a piece of the past that is rarely written down. It is simply lived. And now, you are living it. The day ahead suddenly feels uncertain, shadowed by a question mark that has taken root deep inside you. The household wakes up around you, a slow and predictable series of sounds, the shuffling feet of slaves, the clatter of pottery from the kitchen, the low murmur of morning greetings. You rise and dress, not in a silk stole, but in a simple, practical tunic of undyed wool. Your morning routine is usually a straightforward affair, overseeing the daily tasks, planning the meals, ensuring the smooth running of the domus. But today, your mind is elsewhere. The low, persistent take is a constant distraction, a background hum beneath the noise of the day. You decide not to mention it to your husband. What would you even say? I feel a bit strained. You would likely dismiss it as female vapors, a fleeting complaint not worthy of serious attention. The men of Rome, especially those of the upper classes, often viewed the female body as a mysterious and somewhat unreliable vessel, prone to all sorts of strange humors and ailments. Complaining without a clear, visible symptom would be seen as a weakness, so you keep it to yourself. Your first stop is the kitchen. This is the domain of the head cook, a slave of great importance and skill. But it is also the household's informal pharmacy, on a series of high shelves. Away from the heat of the hearth are rows of clay jars and woven baskets. This is the collection of remedia, the folk remedies that have been passed down through generations. It's the first port of call for any minor illness in the household, for slaves and family members alike. You find the cook, a stout, no-nonsense woman named Lyra, who has been with your family since she was a girl. You don't tell her the specifics of your discomfort. Discretion is paramount. Instead, you approach it indirectly. Lyra, you say, your voice casual. I feel a bit unsettled this morning. Perhaps something from the banquet. What do we have for a restless stomach? Lyra eyes you with a knowing look. She has seen every ailment imaginable within these walls. Without a word, she turns and scans her collection. This is a science of its own, a botany of belief. She dismisses some jars with a slight shake of her head. Fennel seeds? No, that's for bloating on gas. Dry tincture, better for nausea. She is looking for something calming, something to restore balance. Her hand settles on a small, knitted clay pot. She takes it down and opens it, releasing a sharp, clean, herbal scent. Chemeline, she says. From the hills beyond the city, we'll make an infusion. And a little mint. She scoops a small handful of the dried, daisy-like flowers and some dried mint leaves into a cup, then pours hot water over them from a kettle warming near the fire. You sit on a small stool, out of the way of the kitchen's bustle, and hold the warm cup in your hands. The steam rises, carrying the soothing scent. This is the essence of traditional medicine. It's gentle, it's familiar, and it's rooted in the earth. The belief was that the gods had provided these plants for a reason, and that their properties were there to be discovered and used. A plant with heart-shaped leaves might be good for the heart. A plant with a bright, sunny flower could cure jaundice, a yellowing of the skin. This was the doctrine of signatures, a philosophy that things in nature were imprinted with clues to their purpose. It seems simplistic to a modern mind, but for you, it is simply the way things are. You sip the hot, slightly bitter liquid. It's comforting. The warmth spreads through your chest and into your belly. For a moment, you feel a sense of hope. Perhaps this is all it will take. A simple, natural remedy to gently coax your body back into alignment. Lyra also suggests a dietary change. No wine today, she says firmly. No rich sauces. Just plain bread, maybe some soft cheese and fruit. Let the body rest. This advice is sound, and it forms the basis of much of Roman medical thinking. The idea that diet was fundamental to health was a cornerstone of the teachings of famous Greek physicians like Hippocrates, whose ideas had spread throughout the Roman world. So for the rest of the day, you follow her advice. You nibble on a piece of bread, eat a ripe fig. You drink more of the chamomile infusion. There's a strange little tidbit of kitchen wisdom that Lyra offers, almost as an afterthought. She points to a string of garlic hanging from the rafters. Garlic, she says, is good for everything. Cleanses the blood, wards off spirits, settles the wound. This last part is interesting. The belief in garlic as power was immense, but its connection to uterine health was a specific and widespread piece of folklore. Some medical writers even suggested that if a woman placed a clove of garlic in her nether regions, she should be able to taste it on her breath shortly after. If she couldn't, it meant she had a blockage, a sign of infertility. Historians still marvel at the blend of practical observation and pure magical thinking that characterized so much of ancient medicine. The idea is, of course, physiologically impossible, but it was a real diagnostic tool for some. You spend the day in the relative quiet of the peristyle garden, reading a scroll of poetry, trying to distract yourself. Every so often, you take a mental inventory. How do I feel now? Is the ache better? Worse? The same. It seems to fade for a while, only to return. A dull, loyal companion. The herbal infusion is soothing. The rest is pleasant. But as the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the garden once more, you have to admit the truth. It hasn't worked. The shadow inside you has not lifted. A second night comes, and with it, a deeper sense of unease. The simple hope you deplaced in the kitchen remedies has begun to curdle into disappointment. You lie in your cubiculum, the darkness feeling less like a peaceful blanket and more like an isolating void. The ache is no longer a polite suggestion. It has become more assertive. A low, insistent throb that demands your attention. It's still not a sharp pain, but its constancy is wearing you down. Sleep is a shallow, fleeting thing. The next morning, the face that looks back at you from the polished silver mirror seems paler. The eyes shadowed with fatigue. The world outside continues its relentless rhythm. The clatter, the shouting, the commerce. But your own internal world has slowed down, focused on this single, troubling sensation. You go through the motions of your day, but your mind is a tethered bird, always fluttering back to the same point of concern. You try another of Lyra's remedies, a poultice of warm barley applied to your abdomen. It's warm and comforting for a time, but when you remove it, the ache is still there, unmoved, like a stubborn rock in a stream. The worry is now a quiet, growing shadow in your mind. It colors everything. The taste of your food is bland. The vibrant frescoes on the walls seem dull. The laughter of the slave children playing in the peristyle sounds distant and irritating. This is the insidious nature of persistent, low-grade discomfort. It doesn't just affect the body. It seeps into the soul, draining the world of its color and joy. You find yourself withdrawing, seeking the quiet of the garden not for peace, but for privacy. You don't want to see the questioning looks from the household slaves, or worse, have to feign a cheerfulness you do not feel. You sit by the gurgling fountain, a scroll open on your lap, but you are not reading. You are listening to your body, trying to decipher its strange, new language. What is it trying to tell you? This is when the fear begins to set in, not a panicked, sharp fear, but a slow, creeping dread. In your world, there are no simple explanations for illness. Sickness is a mysterious force. It could be a punishment from a displeased god. It could be a curse from an enemy, delivered through a lead tablet buried in a graveyard. Or it could be what the sophisticated, Greek-influenced thinkers believed. An imbalance of the body's fundamental humors. Blood, yellow bile, and black bile. Your body, they would say, was either too hot, too cold, too wet, or too dry. The chamomile infusion was meant to counteract a hot imbalance. The fact that it didn't work suggests the problem is more complex. You think of other women you have known, your mother's cousin, who wasted away from a mysterious affliction of the lungs. A neighbor who died in childbirth, her screams echoing through the thin walls of the insula. Sickness in Rome was a common and oft unfatal visitor. Childbirth was perilous. Infections were untreatable, and fevers could carry away the strongest man in a matter of days. The average life expectancy was brutally low, a fact skewed by incredibly high rates of infant mortality. If you survived to adulthood, your chances were better, but you lived with the constant, ambient knowledge of life's fragility. One of the more peculiar beliefs, whispered among women, was that of the wandering womb. The uterus, or hysteria in Greek, which gives us the word hysteria, was thought to be a separate creature living inside a woman's body. It was, they believed, an animal within an animal. If it became dry or light, it might detach from its proper place and wander around the torso in search of moisture, pressing against other organs and causing all manner of symptoms, from shortness of breath to dizziness and, yes, a deep, persistent ache. The prescribed treatments were often bizarre. Foul-smelling substances were held to the woman's nose to drive the womb downwards, while sweet-smelling perfumes were applied below to lure it back into place. It sounds absurd now, but to many, it was a perfectly logical explanation for the mysterious landscape of female anatomy. Could this be what was happening to you? The thought is both ridiculous and terrifying. The shadow in your mind is no longer a small, containable thing. It has grown, stretching its tendrils into every corner of your thoughts. The home remedies have failed. The simple reassurances have proven hollow. You are left alone with your body and its quiet, relentless complaint. The path you have been on, the gentle path of herbs and rest, has reached a dead end, and as you sit there, the cool stone of the bench seeping through your tunic, you understand that a decision must be made. You cannot simply wait in hope for this to pass. The shadow has grown too large to ignore. You must seek help from someone outside the comforting walls of your own home. Someone with more knowledge, more authority. The thought is not a comforting one. It is, in fact, almost as frightening as the illness itself. The realization dawns on you slowly, over the course of another restless day. It solidifies in the quiet hours of the afternoon, as you watch the sun slant across the peristyle garden, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The path forward is one you have been desperately trying to avoid, but it is now the only one left. You must consult a medicus, a doctor. The word itself carries a heavy weight. It is a mixture of respect, suspicion, and fear. Doctors in Rome were not the universally esteemed figures they might become in later centuries. There was no standardized training, no official licensing board, no oath-bound universally accepted code of ethics that everyone followed. Anyone could call themselves a doctor, a slave with a knack for healing, a traveling charlatan with a case of impressive-looking tools, or a well-read gentleman who had studied the Greek medical texts. Their social status was ambiguous. Many of the most respected physicians were actually Greek, either slaves or freedmen, valued for their knowledge but still viewed as socially inferior by the old Roman aristocracy. To make the decision to see one was a significant step. It meant admitting that the household's own wisdom was not enough. It meant surrendering the privacy of your body and your home to an outsider. And it meant spending money. Good doctors were not cheap. You find your husband in the tablinum, his study, reviewing accounts etched onto a wax tablet. You stand in the doorway for a moment, gathering your resolve. He looks up, his expression neutral. "I need to see a medicus," you say. The words come out more plainly than you intended. He puts down his stylus, his brow furrowing slightly. "Are you ill?" "I have not been well," you say, keeping your voice even, for several days. The ache does not pass. He considers this. His first reaction is not one of sympathy, but of practical concern. Sickness was a disruption. It was an expense. An ill wife could not manage the household effectively. Lyra's remedies have not worked. "They have not," you reply. He is silent for a long moment, tapping the end of his stylus against the wooden desk. You can see the calculations happening in his mind. The cost of the doctor versus the cost of a lingering disruption. Finally, he gives a slow, reluctant nod. "Very well. We will send for Quintus. He has a good reputation. The wife of Flavius trusts him." The mention of a name makes it real. Quintus. You have heard the name. He is known to be one of the more scientific doctors in this part of the city. One who follows the great teachings. This is supposed to be reassuring, but it doesn't entirely quell the knot of apprehension in your stomach. The decision is made. A slave is dispatched to the doctor's residence with a message, requesting a consultation, not a house call. That was reserved for the extremely wealthy or the extremely ill. You would have to go to him. The appointment is made for the following afternoon. Now, you had a new kind of waiting to endure. The waiting is no longer a passive hope for the illness to fade on its own. It is an active, anxious anticipation of a specific event. The doctor's office, the examination, the diagnosis, the unknown. You find yourself observing your own body with a new, almost clinical detachment. You are no longer just a person who feels an ache. You are a patient with a symptom. This subtle shift in identity is unsettling. Your body, which has been your lifelong, silent companion, now feels like a stranger, a puzzle to be solved, or worse, a traitor. You think about the very nature of medicine as you know it. There were, broadly speaking, different schools of thought among physicians, and they were often in fierce competition. The dogmatists or rationalists, like Quintus was supposed to be, believed in finding the hidden causes of disease through theory and reason, focusing on anatomy and four humors. Then there were the empiricists, who rejected all theory. They believed that only direct experience and observation mattered. If a cure had worked before for a certain set of symptoms, you use it again. You don't need to know why it works. You just need to know that it does. And then there were the Methodists, who took a middle path, believing that illness was caused by the pores of the body being either too constricted or too relaxed. Their treatments were all about restoring a middle state. Which school was right? No one knew for sure. The physicians themselves wrote scathing critiques of each other, accusing their rivals of being ignorant butchers or philosophical fools. This ongoing debate among the experts was common knowledge, and it didn't exactly inspire confidence in the patient. Choosing a doctor was a bit like placing a bet. You hoped you were choosing the one whose theories eyes, and whose luck would work in your favor. That evening, you barely touch your simple meal. The ache in your abdomen is still there, a loyal, unwelcome friend, but now it is joined by the frantic fluttering of nerves. Tomorrow, you will walk through the city not as a respected matron on her way to a social engagement, but as a supplicant seeking aid. You will place your trust, your body, and your husband's money into the hands of a man you have never met. A man who will look at you, listen to your story, and pass judgment. And you can only pray to the gods that his judgment is a wise one. The next day is draped in a thick blanket of anxiety. The appointment is not until the afternoon, and the morning hours stretch before you, long and empty. To distract yourself, you busy yourself with household tasks, but your mind is not on the inventory of olive oil or the mending of a torn tunic. Your mind is on Quintus. You seek out Lyra in the kitchen, under the pretense of discussing the menu for the evening meal. But your true purpose is information. Lyra, with her network of friends among the slaves of other great houses, is a repository of the city's most reliable gossip. Lyra, you begin, trying to sound casual. My husband has arranged for me to see the medicus. Quintus. Lyra stops what she is doing, pounding herbs with a mortar and pestle, and looks at you, her expression unreadable. Quintus. She repeats slowly, as if tasting the name. He is very learned. He has many scrolls. In Rome, this was a significant compliment. Owning scrolls, especially expensive Greek medical texts, was a sign of a serious, educated physician. It set him apart from the street corner healers who relied on charms and incantations. The Lady Valeria, the wife of the magistrate, she sees him. Lyra continues, lowering her voice conspiratorially. She says he can tell what is wrong with you just by looking at the color of your tongue and the whites of your eyes. This was a common diagnostic technique, rooted in the idea that the body's internal state was reflected in its outward appearance. He told her that her humors were too phlegmatic. Lyra adds, stumbling slightly over the unfamiliar Greek term. He prescribed a diet of hot, dry foods, roasted meats, peppers, and very little water, to counteract the cold, wet nature of the phlegm, and he made her exercise, even when she felt tired. This aligns with what you've heard. Quintus was a follower of the humoral theory. Everything was a matter of balancing those four essential fluids. Blood was hot and wet. Phlegm was cold and wet. Yellow bile was hot and dry. And black bile was cold and dry. Every person had a natural temperament based on their dominant humor, and every illness was a disruption of that balance. The treatment was always about opposites. A cold illness required a hot cure. But then Elwire's expression darkened slightly. My cousin, who works in the house of the merchant Lucius, tells a different story. His youngest son had a fever. Quintus was cold. He said the boy's blood was too hot and in excess. You know what's coming next. He bled him. You whisper. Lyra nods grimly, with a bronze lancet, a small cut on the inside of the elbow. He took a whole cup of blood. He said it would release the heat and reduce the excess. The boy grew weak. The fever did not break. He was gone 2 days later. You feel a chill, despite the warmth of the kitchen. This was the terrifying other side of learned medicine. Bloodletting was a cornerstone of treatment for a huge range of ailments. It was considered a powerful, fast-acting way to restore humoral balance, and sometimes, for certain conditions related to high blood pressure, it might have actually made the patient feel better by sheer chance. But for a child with a fever, likely from an infection, it was a death sentence. It weakened the body's ability to fight, and in an age without antiseptics, the cut itself could introduce a new infection. Of course, Lyra adds quickly, perhaps seeing the fear in your eyes, no one blames Quintus. The boy was already in the grip of the fever. What could anyone do? The gods had decided. This was a common sentiment. When a treatment failed, it was rarely seen as the doctor's fault. It was fate, or the will of the gods, or the illness was simply too powerful. Doctors had a built-in excuse for their failures. Lyra then shares a stranger, more specific detail. They say he has a special interest in the ailments of women. He wrote a treatise on it. He believes that we are fundamentally damper, you ask, confused. And colder. Our humors are naturally more like phlegm. That is why we are, as he says, more prone to melancholy and strange moods. Our insides are like a damp field where illnesses can easily grow. This nugget of misogynistic medical theory was surprisingly common. Physicians from Hippocrates to Galen wrote extensively on the inferior nature of the female body, seeing it as a less perfect, colder, and wetter version of the male form. This wasn't just casual prejudice. It was a foundational scientific principle that informed their diagnoses and treatments for women. So, according to Quintus, your very nature as a woman made you a more hospitable environment for disease. It's a deeply unsettling thought. You leave the kitchen with a churning mix of feelings. You are armed with more information, but the information is a double-edged sword. Quintus is educated, respected, and sought after by the elite. He is also a man whose treatments are based on a rigid, abstract theory that could lead to dangerous interventions like bloodletting. He is a specialist in women's health, but his specialty is built on a foundation of prejudice. The whispers and stories have given the anonymous medicus a face, but it is a complex and contradictory one. He is both a source of hope and a source of fear. The thought of placing yourself in his hands is no longer just an abstract worry. It's a concrete fear, shaped by the story of a dead child and the bizarre theory of your own dampness. The minutes tick by, and the time for your appointment grows closer. The shadow of the doctor's reputation now looms as large as the shadow of the illness itself. When the time comes, you don't go alone. It would be improper. You are accompanied by Lyra, a steady and reassuring presence, and a strong male slave from the household to act as escorts and guards. The city is still a place where a respectable woman does not walk unprotected. Leaving the sanctuary of your domus feels like stepping from a quiet, still room into a raging river. The afternoon sun is bright, and the street is a churning torrent of humanity. The noise washes over you. The clatter of wagon wheels on stone, the shouts of vendors, the braying of a donkey, the constant babble of conversation in Latin, Greek, and a dozen other languages from across the empire. You pull your palla up to cover the lower half of your face, a gesture of modesty and a practical barrier against the dust and smells. Today, the familiar scents of the city seem sharper, more offensive. The odor from the fuller's shop, where clothes were cleaned with urine, is particularly pungent. The stench from the butcher's stall, with its buzzing flies and discarded animal parts, makes your stomach clench. The whole world seems designed to assault your senses, to remind you of the messiness and decay of mortal life. Your little procession moves slowly, the male slaves clearing a path through the throng. You are an island of purpose in a sea of aimless motion. You pass a group of soldiers in their distinctive segmented armor, their hobnail-led sandals clanking on the pavement. They are laughing loudly at some shared joke, their confidence a stark contrast to your own internal turmoil. You turn a corner and find your way blocked by a crowd gathered around a makeshift stage. A snake charmer is playing a reedy pipe. A sluggish cobra is weighing in a basket at his feet. Beside him, a partner is selling small vials of a dark liquid, claiming it to be a universal antidote to snake bites, poison, and even bad luck. This was the other end of the medical spectrum from Quintus. The street peddler, the magician, the purveyor of hope in a bottle. Some historians argue that for the average Roman, this kind of folk magic and the scientific medicine of the physicians were not mutually exclusive. A person might see a doctor for a broken bone, but still buy an amulet to ward off a fever. You looked for help wherever you could find it. Your escort steers you around the crowd, and you continue on your way. You walk past the towering facade of a public bathish. The air around it's steamy and filled with the sounds of splashing and shouting. You pass a bakery, and a raw, comforting smell of fresh bread momentarily soothes your frayed nerves. The city is a living museum of itself. Everything is on display. Life is lived in the open. You see a scribe sitting at a small table, writing a letter for a man who is dictating emotionally to him, tears in his eyes. You see a woman haggling fiercely with a vegetable seller over the price of leeks. You see a group of children using a piece of chalk to draw a hopscotch grid on the paving stones. All of these small, ordinary dramas unfold into the vast, indifferent sky. As you get closer to the district where Quintus lives, the character of the streets changes. The towering, precarious and soul give way to the more stately, private entrances of large domes like your own. The noise level drops. The smells are more of flowers and clean stone than of commissioned crowds. This is a wealthy neighborhood, the kind of place a successful physician would choose to live and practice. The work has taken its toll. The constant ache in your abdomen, which had been a dull throb, has sharpened slightly with the motion of walking. Each step is a small reminder of your body's rebellion. You feel a sheen of sweat on your brow, though the day is not excessively hot. Your anxiety is manifesting physically, making your heart beat faster. Your breath feels shallow. You pause for a moment, leaning against a wall to catch your breath. Lyra places a steadying hand on your arm. "We are almost there, my lady," she says, her voice slow and calm. You look at her face, her expression one of simple, loyal concern, and it gives you a small measure of strength. This journey through the city has been more than just a physical trip from one point to another. It has been a journey through the layers of your world. You have moved from the absolute privacy of your home, through the chaotic, shared life of the street, and are now arriving at a space that is neither public nor private, but something in between, the professional realm of the medicus. It's a space with its own rules, its own language, and its own fears. Finally, your escort stops. He points to a doorway, identical to all the others on this quiet, respectable street. There is no sign, no painted shingle proclaiming it as a doctor's office. You would only know it if you were told. It's a testament to the fact that the doctor's reputation was spread not by advertising, but by word of mouth. You take a deep breath, smooth down your tunic, and prepare to cross one more threshold. The unassuming door seems to loom before you, a portal to the unknown. You stand before the door for a moment, a solid, imposing barrier of dark wood. It's the entrance to a domus, just like your own, yet it feels entirely different. Your door leads to a sanctuary. This one feels like the entrance to a trial. Lyra gives you a small, encouraging nod. One of your escorts steps forward and knocks, his knuckles striking the wood with a sound that seems unnaturally loud in the quiet street. After a moment, the door is opened not by a doorkeeper slave, but by a young man in a simple, clean tunic. He is perhaps 16 or 17 years old, with an earnest, serious face. He is likely the doctor's apprentice, a student learning the craft. He looks at your small group, his eyes taking in your fine clothes and your escorts, and he understands immediately that you are a wealthy and important client. "We have an appointment," your escort says formally, "for my mistress, with the medicus Quintus." The apprentice nods and steps aside, holding the door open. The medicus is expecting you. Please, come in. You step across the threshold. From the bright afternoon light into the relative dimness of the FAUC is, just like in your home, the passageway is designed to be an airlock between the outside world and the private interior. But here, the familiar mosaic of a guard dog is absent. Instead, the walls are painted a plain, neutral white. There is a faint, unfamiliar smell in the air. It's not the domestic smell of cooking or flowers. It's a sharp, clean, vaguely medicinal scent. Something like a mix of dried herbs and vinegar. It's the smell of a place where sickness is confronted. The apprentice leads you through the passageway and into the atrium. The layout is similar to your own home. The open compel UVIUM in the roof, the shallow impel UVIM on the floor below. But the feeling is completely different. Your atrium is a living space, filled with the signs of family life. This atrium is sterile, impersonal. It has been converted into a professional space. Instead of family rooms opening off the sides, the doorways are closed. Instead of ancestral masks on decorative furniture, the space is almost bare. There are just a few simple wooden benches arranged along the walls. This is the waiting area, a place where the public is received. The apprentice gestures for you to sit. The medicus is with another patient. He will be with you shortly. Your two male escorts remain standing, sentinel-like, near the entrance. They are out of place here. Their protective presence a reminder of the world of status and social order you've just left. Here, in the doctor's antechamber, such things feel less important. Here, everyone is reduced to the common denominator of their ailment. Lyra sits beside you on the hard bench. You are grateful for her silent company. The quiet of the room is heavy, broken only by the faint sound of dripping water from the impel UVIM and a low, murmuring voice coming from behind one of the closed doors. That must be Quintus. You can't make out the words, but the tone is calm, measured, authoritative. You look around the room, trying to glean more clues about the man you are about to meet. On a small table in the corner, there are several scrolls, neatly rolled and stacked. They look like scholarly texts, not light reading. This confirms Lyr's report. He is a man of learning. Beside the scrolls is a bronze bowl containing a smoking substance. You recognize the scent of frankincense. It was often burned for its pleasant smell, but some physicians believed it also purified the air, driving away the bad airs or miasma that were thought to cause disease. It was a practice that blended the spiritual with the vaguely scientific. You think about the unassuming nature of this entrance. In a city like Rome, obsessed with status and display, a doctor's practice was in a curious position. A physician needed to project an air of sober competence, not flashy wealth. A waiting room that was too opulent might suggest he was more of a businessman than a healer. A waiting room that was too squalid would inspire no confidence. This space, clean, simple, serious, strikes a careful balance. It is designed to be reassuring, to communicate that this is a place of science and order, not chaos and quackery. But it is not reassuring. The starkness of the room, the medicinal smell, the disquieting murmur from behind the closed door, it all serves to heighten your anxiety. You are now truly in his domain. Your own status as the mistress of a great house has been temporarily suspended. You are a patient, waiting your turn, just like anyone else. The door to his examination room might as well be a gate to another world, one with its own arcane rules and frightening possibilities. You smooth a non-existent crease in your tunic, your hands betraying the nervousness you are trying so hard to conceal. You focus on the slow drip, drip, drip of water into the basin, trying to match your breathing to its steady, monotonous rhythm. The waiting feels like an eternity. The silence in the waiting room is a character in itself. It's not a peaceful silence. It's a tense, expectant one. You sit on the hard bench, your back straight, your hands clasped tightly in your lap. Lyra sits beside you, a silent pillar of support. Every small sound is amplified. The shuffle of your sandals on the stone floor, the distant clatter of a cart in the street outside, the impossibly slow drip of water into the impervium. Time stretches and becomes sluggish. You find yourself studying the other people waiting. On a bench across the atrium sits an old man, his breath a ragged, wheezing sound. He clutches a walking stick, his knuckles white. His face is pale and etched with lines of chronic pain. He doesn't look at you. His gaze is fixed on the door to the doctor's room, his expression a mixture of hope and resignation. He is a vision of a future you pray to avoid. A little while later, a young mother comes in with a small child, a boy of about 4 or 5. The boy's face is flushed, and he has a crude white, barking cough that echoes in the high silencing room. The mother holds him tightly, murmuring soothing words, her own face tight with worry. She glances at you, and for a moment, your eyes meet. You see in her face the same fear you feel in your own heart. It's a silent, instantaneous bond of shared vulnerability. Here, in this room, social standing melts away. You are all just supplicates at the altar of health, hoping for a favorable oracle. The medicinal smell you noticed upon entering seems to grow stronger, or perhaps you are just becoming more attuned to it. You try to pick out the individual scents. There's the frankincense, of course, but underneath it, there's something else. A sharp, vinegary smell, likely from Porsay. The mixture of water and vinegar that was a common drink but was also used as a disinfectant and cleaning agent. And there's a bitter, herbal scent, like crushed leaves. It's the smell of a place where nature is being bent to human will, where plants are transformed from food into medicine. The closed door finally opens. A man, probably the husband of the unseen patient Quintus was speaking with, exits first. He looks grim and worried. He is followed by a woman, her face pale, leaning heavily on his arm. She doesn't look at anyone as she slowly makes her way across the atrium and out the front door. They're silent. Somber departure does nothing to ease your anxiety. The apprentice appears at the now open doorway. He looks at you. The medicus will see you now. You stand up, your legs feeling slightly unsteady. Lyra rises with you, but the apprentice holds up a hand. Just the patient, for now. You look at Lyra, a flash of panic in your eyes. You had assumed she would come with you. To face this alone feels like a small betrayal. Lyra gives your hand a quick, firm squeeze. I will be right here, she whispers. You turn and walk towards the door, each step feeling heavy. The old man on the bench watches you go, his weary eyes following you. You are acutely aware of being observed, of being the next subject in this quiet, anxious theater. You step through the doorway, and the apprentice pulls a heavy curtain across the opening behind you, muffling the sounds of the atrium. You are now in another small, intermediary room, a sort of private office. The medicus himself is there. Quintus is not what you expected. He is not a wizened old man, nor a charismatic charlatan. He is a man of middle years, perhaps 40, with a neat, grey-streaked beard and intelligent, piercing eyes. He is dressed in a simple but clean Greek-style robe, the himation, which marks him as a man of learning and foreign tradition. He is standing at a tall wooden desk, writing on a scroll with a reed pen. He doesn't look up immediately. He finishes his sentence, his hand moving with practiced precision. This is a deliberate gesture, a subtle assertion of his authority. He is the one in control here. His time is important. He finally sets down his pen, dips it in a pot of ink, and carefully wipes the nib on a piece of cloth. Only then does he turn his full attention to you. "Welcome," he says, his voice calm and even, the same voice you heard murmuring from the waiting room. "I am Quintus. Please, tell me what troubles you." His directness is both a relief and a new source of pressure. The moment has arrived. You must now take the formless, private take that has lived inside you for days and translate it into words. You must offer up your story to this calm, serious stranger, and hope that he can find meaning and a cure in your testimony. The silent waiting is over. The interrogation has begun. You stand before him, the silence of the small office pressing in on you. His gaze is not unkind, but it is intensely focused, analytical. It feels less like you are being seen by a person and more like you are being observed by a mind. You take a breath and begin to speak. For several days, medicus, you start. Your voice a little shaky at first. I have had a discomfort, a persistent ache, deep in my belly. You describe its character, not sharp, but heavy, constant. You tell him about the banquet. Your initial thought that it was merely indigestion. You recount the failure of the household remedies. The chemalaim in the barley poultice. You try to be precise, to give him the facts he needs, but it feels like trying to describe the color of the wind. He listens without interruption, his head tilted slightly, his dark eyes never leaving your face. He is not just hearing your words. He is studying you. He is observing your posture, the flush on your cheeks, the slight tremor in your hands. To him, these are all symptoms, clues to the puzzle of your body. When you finish, he nods slowly. I see, he says. He doesn't immediately offer a diagnosis or a reassurance. Instead, he begins to explain his philosophy. This, you realize, is part of his method. He is not just a healer. He is a teacher. He needs you to understand the logic of his art. The body, he begins, his voice taking on a professorial tone, is not a mysterious thing, ruled by the winds of the gods or by vengeful spirits. It is a natural system, governed by principles we can understand. The great physician Hippocrates taught us that our health, our very temperament, is determined by the balance of four vital fluids, the humors. He picks up a chart from his desk. It's a beautifully drawn diagram, a circle divided into 4 quadrants. He points to each section as he speaks. There is blood, he says, pointing to the top quadrant. Labeled sanguis. It is hot and wet, like the spring. A person with abundant blood is cheerful, active, sociable, sanguine. Then there is yellow bile. He continues, moving to the next quadrant. Cholera. It is hot and dry, like the summer. A choleric person is ambitious, energetic, but also quick to anger. Next, black bile. He gestures to the 3rd section. Melancholia. It is cold and dry, like autumn. The melancholic person is quiet, serious, thoughtful, but prone to sadness. And finally, phlegm, he concludes, tapping the last quadrant. Phlegmae. It is cold and wet, like winter. A phlegmatic person is calm, patient, and peaceful. He puts the chart down and looks at you intently. All illness, he declares, is simply a result of one or more of these humors being in excess or in deficiency. A fever is an excess of heat, a chill, an excess of cold. My task is not to fight a disease. My task is to restore the body's natural equilibrium, to guide it back to the perfect balance with which it was created. It's a grand, elegant, and completely comprehensive theory of everything. It explains personality, sickness, health, and the universe in one neat package. For a Roman mind accustomed to seeing omens in the flight of birds, this is a revelation. It is science. It is order. It is a rational way to understand a chaotic and frightening world. And now, he begins to apply it to you. You are a woman, he states, as if this is the first and most important piece of data. The female form is naturally colder and wetter than the male. Your dominant humor is phlegm, with a tendency towards the cold dampness of black bile. This is why women are more nurturing, more passive, more suited to the quiet life of the home. You notice he doesn't mention his damper field theory out loud, but the foundation is clear. He then asks a series of questions, his inquiries guided by this humoral map. What is the nature of your diet? Do you favor rich sauces or simple food? Do you drink much wine? How are your moods? Have you been feeling more sad or irritable than usual? Each question is designed to find the source of the imbalance. The rich food at the banquet, that would add heat and moisture. The wine, more heat. Your worry and anxiety, that could be a sign of excess black bile, which is cold and dry, and can cause a stagnation in the body, leading to aches and pains. You answer his questions as best you can. The whole process is strangely impersonal. He is not interested in you as a person, but in you as a system of interacting fluids. He is a master mechanic, listening to the engine of your body, trying to identify the faulty part. This is the very heart of his practice, the intellectual foundation upon which everything else is built. Historians will marvel at the longevity of this theory for over 1500 years. From ancient Greece until the scientific revolution, the doctrine of the four humors would dominate Western medicine. It was a powerful idea, and a resilient one. It was also, of course, completely wrong. But, in this room, at this moment, it is the undisputed truth. After a long period of questioning, Quintus falls silent again, his brow furrowed in concentration. He is processing the information, weighing the humoral evidence. The banquet likely introduced an excess of heat and moisture. He muses, almost to himself, but your underlying female nature is cold. This could create a conflict, a boiling of the humors in the lower part of the body, a kind of trapped, unproductive heat. He looks at you. I will need to examine you more closely. The symptoms you describe are common, but their cause must be accurately determined. The moment you have been dreading is here. The interview is over. The physical examination is about to begin. He gestures towards another curtained doorway at the back of the office. If you will please come this way. You follow him through the curtained doorway, your heart pounding a nervous rhythm against your ribs. You step into a different kind of space. And his office was the seat of his intellect. This room is the workshop. It is the place where theory meets flesh. The room is small, stark, and ruthlessly functional. There are no decorative frescoes on the walls. No elegant furniture. The only light comes from a single high, narrow window, and glazed and covered with a piece of stretched parchment to diffuse the harsh sunlight into a clinical, shadowless glow. The air in here is even more intensely medicinal, with the sharp tang of vinegar hanging heavy. Your eyes are immediately drawn to the object in the center of the room. It is a couch, but not like the comfortable dining couches from the banquet. This is a special piece of furniture, a medical examination table. It is carved from a dark, heavy wood, and it has a high, adjustable backrest and strange-looking leg supports. Some versions of these couches, you've heard, were made of marble or stone. They were called scam-num. This one is wood, but it looks just as hard and unforgiving. It is not designed for comfort. It is designed for access. Alone when world. There are shelves lined with clay jars and glass bottles of all shapes and sizes. Each is meticulously labeled with a small tag, the writing neat and precise. You can read the labels from here, but you can imagine their contents. Dried herbs, powdered minerals, tinctures, oils, and all the raw materials of his pharmacy. This is the physical manifestation of his prescribed cures. And another rule. Hanging from a series of bronze hooks are various medical implements. You see linen bandages of different widths, rolled neatly. You see a set of sponges, some natural sea sponges, others made of wool. You see a collection of cupping vessels, small glass or bronze stones that would be heated and placed on the skin to create a vacuum. This practice, known as cucurbitula, was thought to draw out bad humors from deep within the body to the surface. It was a common treatment for everything from muscle aches to lung ailments. Quintus gestures towards the examination couch. Please, he says, his voice devoid of emotion, remove your outer tunic and lie down. This is the moment of ultimate vulnerability. You are a respectable Roman matron, for whom modesty is a core virtue. To disrobe, even partially, in front of a man who is not your husband, is a profound violation of social norms. But he is a medicus. In this room, the rules are different. Your body is no longer a private vessel. It is an object of scientific inquiry. With fumbling fingers, you untie the belt of your tunic and slip the garment over your head, leaving you in your thin linen under tunic. The sub you see you law. The cool air of the room raises goosebumps on your arms. You feel exposed, stripped not just of your clothing, but of your dignity. You move to the couch and sit, the wood hardened cold beneath you. Then, awkwardly, you swing your legs up and lie back, staring up at the plastered ceiling. Quintus gives you a moment, then he approaches. He begins his examination in a systematic, detached way. He feels the pulse at your wrist, his brow furrowed in concentration. The Roman physicians didn't just count the pulse. They believed different rhythms and qualities, like an at-night pulse or a galloping one, indicated specific humoral imbalances. The nuances of this practice are a subject of much debate among later medical historians, who struggle to understand exactly what the ancient doctors were feeling. He then presses gently on your forehead, then your neck, assessing your temperature and the texture of your skin. Your skin is slightly damp, he murmurs, but not overly hot. This points away from a purely choleric condition. He asks you to open your mouth and show him your tongue. He peers at it closely, then examines your eyes and the inside of your eyelids. Every observation is a data point, fed into the complex calculus of his humoral theory. Then, he moves to your abdomen. I will palpate the area of the discomfort, he says, his tone clinical. Relax as much as you can. Relaxing feels impossible. His hands, which you expect to be cold, are surprisingly warm. He presses firmly but gently on different parts of your belly, his fingers probing. Does this cause pain? He asks, pressing near your right hip, and here, pressing on the left. You tell him where the ache intensifies, where it recedes. He is mapping the geography of your pain. The whole experience is deeply strange. You feel a profound sense of dissociation, as if you are floating above your own body, watching this stranger interact with it. He is not touching you. He is touching a collection of organs and fluids that happens to be housed in your form. This detachment is a coping mechanism, a way to endure the indignity of the moment. This kind of hands-on physical examination was not always a given in Roman medicine. Some high-status physicians, especially those who fancied themselves philosophers, considered touching the patient to be beneath them. They would diagnose based on conversation alone. Quintus, as a follower of the more practical Greek tradition, clearly believes in the value of physical evidence. Finally, he straightens up. His face is thoughtful, his expression serious. The ache is deep, he says, and it seems to be centered in the lower region, the seat of female function. The palpation confirms a certain hardness, a stagnation. It is as I suspected, a conflict of humors, a hot ailment in a cold place. He looks from your abdomen to your face, his gaze direct, to understand the true nature of the stagnation. He says slowly, I must see its source. I will need to perform an internal examination. Your breath catches in your throat. An internal examination. The words hang in the sterile air of the room, heavy with implication. This goes far beyond the pressing of a hand on your belly. This is a journey into the most private, unseen landscape of your body. Your mind, already reeling from the strangeness of the situation, now floods with a fresh wave of dread. Quintus seems to sense your fear. His expression softens, just slightly. It is necessary, he says, his voice still calm and authoritative, but with a hint of what might be reassurance. We cannot treat an enemy we cannot see. To guess at the cause would be the work of a charlatan. A true physician must seek knowledge, even when it is difficult to obtain. He turns away from you, giving you a moment. He walks over to a large wooden chest in the corner of the room. He kneels and lifts the heavy lid. From inside, you can hear the soft clatter of metal on metal. He is retrieving his tools. The sound fills you with a chilling fascination. You are both terrified of what is to come and morbidly curious about the instruments of this strange and invasive art. What do they look like? What are they for? The very idea of metal tools designed to enter a human body is profoundly alien. The only similar tools you've ever seen are in a butcher's shop or a carpenter's workshop. The thought of them being used on you is almost too much to bear. He closes the chest and rises, carrying a long, narrow wooden box. He places it on a small table near the foot of your examination couch. He doesn't open it immediately. He first goes to a basin of water in the corner and washes his hands meticulously, drying them on a clean linen towel. It's a gesture of professionalism that is, in its own way, both comforting and terrifying. It shows he is careful, but it also signals the gravity of the procedure to come. Then, he returns to the box. He unfastens a simple bronze latch and lifts the lid. He folds back a layer of soft, dark cloth, revealing the contents within. Your eyes fix on the instruments. They are laid out in neat, ordered rows, nestled in carved-out depressions in the wood. They are made of bronze, and the metal has been polished to a high sheen. In the cruel, diffuse light of the room, they gleam with a cold, intimidating beauty. They look like surgical instruments, but also like something else, like instruments of torture, or perhaps arcane ritual objects. There is a variety of shapes and sizes. You see long, slender probes with blunt, rounded ends. There are fine, sharp-looking hooks. There are several scalpels. Their leaf-shaped blades looking lethally sharp. These, you pray, are for surgeons who deal with wounds and tumors, not for an examination like yours. There's a bronze object that looks like a spoon, but with a long, thin handle. This, you would later learn, was a cautery spoon, a tool heated in a brazier and used to burn away diseased tissue. The thought sends a shiver down your spine. Quintus seems to be selecting his tools with great care, his long fingers hovering over the collection. He is not looking at you. He is focused entirely on his instruments. To him, this is a familiar process. To you, it is a waking nightmare. He picks up a long, thin rod of polished bronze, a uterine cell. Its purpose was to measure the depth and position of the uterus, a key part of investigating the wandering womb theory. He places it on a clean linen cloth beside the box. He then selects another instrument, the pair of long, forceps-like tongues with small, serrated jaws. These were uterine forceps, used for removing foreign objects or, in more extreme cases, for difficult childbirth aches. The sight of them makes the ache in your own abdomen flare with sympathetic dread. This collection of tools represents the pinnacle of Roman medical technology. Many of them were direct descendants of Greek instruments, refined and perfected by Roman artisans. Archaeologists will one day unearth sets like this from the ruins of Pompeii and from the graves of physicians, marveling at their sophistication and their unnerving similarity to modern surgical tools. They will debate their exact uses, piecing together clues from medical texts and the instruments themselves. Was this hook for lifting tissue, or for extracting a stone from the bladder? The line between healing and harming seems terrifyingly thin. You lie on the cold couch, a captive audience to this silent, terrifying prelude. The room, which already felt small, now feels suffocating. There is no escape. You have willingly walked into this place, placed your trust in this man and his science, and this is where that trust has led you, to a stark room, a hard table, and a man laying out an aisle of gleaming bronze tools. The quiet, internal discomfort that brought you here now seems like a distant memory, completely overshadowed by the immediate, visceral fear of what is about to happen. His selection of tools is not yet complete. His hand hovers over the wooden case, then decisively picks up the final instrument. He places it on the linen cloth next to the others. But of all the gleaming, intimidating objects, this is the one that holds your gaze. It is the most complex, the most mechanical, and the most frightening. It is a vaginal speculum, The dioptra. It's an object of terrifying ingenuity, forged from a dark, heavy bronze. It consists of a handle and 3 L-shaped prongs, or valves. The handle contains a sophisticated screw mechanism. When the handle is turned, the 3 prongs, which are initially closed together in a narrow point, slowly and inexorably spread apart. Its purpose is singular and chilling: to open the body for inspection, to turn a private, internal space into a visible, accessible cavity. You stare at the speculum, lying cold and inert on the white linen. It looks less like a medical instrument, more like a piece of arcane machinery, a torture device from some dark, forgotten myth. The bronze has a dull, ominous luster. You can almost feel its cold, metallic weight, its unforgiving rigidity. The design is brutally efficient. There are no soft edges, no concessions to comfort. It is a machine for seeing, and the person it is used upon is secondary to its function. Quintus picks it up, and its weight seems to settle in his hand. He holds it up to the light, inspecting the mechanism, perhaps checking for any stiffness or imperfection. He gives the screw a small turn, and you watch, mesmerized in horror, as the 3 prongs splay open slightly with a soft, metallic squeak. He turns it back, and they close. A smooth, controlled motion of the device is somehow more terrifying than if it were rude and clumsy. It speaks of long practice and repeated use. This instrument, you instinctively understand, is the key to the entire procedure. It is the gate through which he will pass to view the stagnation he spoke of. It is the tool that will allow him to confirm his theories about your cold, damp female nature. The invention of the speculum is a point of some debate for future historians. While a few earlier, simpler versions may have existed in the Greek world, it was the Romans, with their genius for practical engineering and metalworking, who perfected this complex, screw-driven design. Examples will be found in Pompeii, preserved by the volcanic ash, looking almost as functional as the day they were made. Their discovery will shock the modern world, a stark reminder of the sophistication and the brutality of Roman medicine. Was it a common tool, or was it a specialized instrument used only by the most advanced and daring physicians like Quintus? The evidence is sparse, leaving much to speculation. Quintus places the speculum back on the cloth and turns his attention to a small bronze brazier in the corner, where coals are glowing softly. He places the tip of the uterine sound, the long metal rod, into the coals for a moment, not to make it red hot, but just to warm it. He then dips it in a bowl of what you assume is scented oil. The coldness of the bronze can cause the inner parts to seize up, he explains, his voice matter of fact. A little warmth and oil make the passage easier. This small, almost considerate gesture is profoundly unsettling. It's a practical acknowledgement of the discomfort he is about to cause, a sign that he has done this many, many times before. He is preparing his tools, but he is also preparing you. You lie on the couch, your knuckles white as you grip the edges of the hard wood. Your body is tense, braced for the inevitable. Your mind is a whirlwind of fear and a strange, clinical curiosity. This is really happening. The strange, 3-pronged bronze contraption is about to become a part of your immediate, physical reality. The speculum lies there, waiting. It is the symbol of this entire experience. It represents the cold, analytical gaze of his science, the complete surrender of your privacy, and the physical manifestation of his theories about your body. It is an instrument of knowledge. But for you, in this moment, it feels only like an instrument of dread. You close your eyes, wishing you could disappear, wishing you could rewind time to yesterday, to the day before, when your only problem was a quiet, manageable ache. That ache now seems like a lost luxury, a fond, distant memory. The gleaming bronze speculum has replaced it as the center of your universe. With his instruments prepared, Quintus turns his full attention back to you. Before he begins the physical part of the examination, he offers his diagnosis, a theory to frame the procedure. He is not just treating a symptom, He is correcting a fundamental flaw he perceives in your very anatomy and nature. The stagnation I feel, he begins, his voice returning to its calm, professorial tone, and the nature of the ache you describe, is characteristic of a condition we see often in women. It is a malady of the womb. He pauses, letting the weight of his words settle in the small room. He is about to explain one of the most enduring and peculiar beliefs in the history of medicine. The womb, he says, leaning forward slightly, his expression earnest, is not a fixed organ like the liver or the heart. It is noble. It has a life of its own. You could almost think of it as an animal within you, with its own desires and needs. You stare at him, your fear momentarily eclipsed by sheer bewilderment. That animal, inside you, the idea is so profoundly strange. It's difficult to process. This creature, he continues, completely serious, desires moisture and warmth. It is naturally drawn to pleasant smells and repelled by foul ones. When a woman is healthy and her body is in balance, the womb remains in its proper place, content. But if the body becomes too dry, or too cold, or womb can become distressed, it may become light and begin to wander from its moorings, seeking the moisture it craves from other organs. He is describing the theory of the wandering womb, or hystore in Greek. This was not a fringe belief. It was a mainstream medical doctrine, taught by the most respected physicians and recorded in the foundational texts of medicine. The concept originated with the ancient Egyptians and was adopted and elaborated upon by Greek physicians like Plato and Hippocrates, eventually becoming gospel in the Roman medical world. When it wanders upwards, he explains, gesturing towards your chest, it can press against the diaphragm, causing shortness of breath, a feeling of suffocation, and even seizures. If it wanders to the side, it can cause sharp pains and aches. Your description of a deep, persistent ache is a classic sign that the womb is agitated, that it is not at ease in its proper station. The theory provides a beautifully simple explanation for a vast array of symptoms that doctors could not otherwise understand. Any ailment in a woman that was not obviously a fever or a broken bone could potentially be blamed on this restless internal organ. Dizziness, fainting spells, melancholy, aches, pains, anxiety, all could be laid at the feet of the wandering womb. It was the ultimate scapegoat for the mysteries of female physiology, and it gave us the word hysteria, forever linking the female body to notions of emotional instability and irrationality. Our goal, he says, is twofold. First, we must soothe the womb and persuade it to return to its proper place. Second, we must address the underlying imbalance, the dryness, that caused it to wander in the first place. He explains the traditional treatments, which now make a terrifying kind of sense. We can use fumigation. We would burn foul-smelling substances like asphalt or goat's horn and have you inhale the fumes. This would displease the womb and drive it downward. Simultaneously, we would apply sweet-smelling perfumes and oils, like rose or spikenard, to the lower body, to entice it back to its home. The idea of this is almost comical in its absurdity, yet he speaks with the utmost seriousness. This was not quackery. This was established medical protocol. But first, he says, his voice becoming more clinical again, I must use the diopter to see the state of the organ, to see if it is inflamed, or if there is any unhealthy discharge that confirms the humoral imbalance. The visual evidence is paramount. So the speculum is not just for a general look. It is a tool specifically to diagnose and confirm the movements and moods of this mythical internal creature. The cold, mechanical instrument of bronze is being used in service of a theory that is pure fantasy. This is Roman medicine in a nutshell. A bizarre marriage of sophisticated engineering and deeply flawed, almost magical, sentient. Historians will forever be fascinated by this theory. They will debate its origins and its impact. Was it simply a genuine, albeit mistaken, attempt to explain complex symptoms in a pre-scientific age? Or was it a more insidious tool of social control, A way to pathologize female emotions and dismiss women's health complaints as the mere wanderings of an unruly organ. The truth is likely a complex mixture of both. For you, lying on the hard couch, the academic debate is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the reality of the moment. You are about to be subjected to an invasive procedure based on the belief that a small animal is living inside of you and has decided to go for a walk. The absurdity of it all does nothing to lessen the fear. In fact, it might even make it worse. You are not just a patient. You are the subject of a strange and powerful delusion, and you have no choice but to play your part. Having laid out his grand theory of your anatomy, Quintus now moves on to the specifics of the cure he envisions. The examination is still the first step, but he is already thinking ahead to the treatment plan. It's a way of showing you that he has a clear path forward, that your condition, while serious, is something he has dealt with before and understands completely. Once we have pacified the womb and guided it home, he continues, his voice a low, confident murmur, we must then address the long-term health of the body. We must correct the imbalance of your humors. This will involve a strict regimen of diet, rest, and carefully chosen medicaments. He gestures toward the shelves lined with his neatly labeled clay jars. The gods, in their wisdom, have not left us without remedies. Nature herself provides the cures for our ailments. We must simply have the knowledge to recognize them. He then explains another core principle of his medical philosophy, a concept as strange and poetic as the wandering womb. Often, he says, a plant or a mineral will bear a resemblance to the part of the body it is meant to heal. This is not a coincidence. It is a sign, a signature left by the divine powers, to guide us. We call this the principle of resemblance, or sympathy. This was the doctrine of signatures, a belief system that was deeply woven into ancient and medieval medicine. It was a form of visual poetry applied to pharmacology. The logic was simple and elegant. For example, he explains, picking up a dried, brittle-looking leaf from a bowl on his desk. Look at this lungwort. Do you see the small spots on its leaf? They resemble the spots on a diseased lung. Therefore, an infusion of this plant is an excellent treatment for coughs and afflictions of the chest. He points to another jar. Inside is powdered walnut. The nut itself, as you know, looks like a tiny brain, folded and wrinkled. Therefore, it is a powerful medicine for headaches, dizziness, and improving the memory. You listen, captivated by this strange logic. It transforms the world into a vast, living apothecary, where every root, leaf, and stone holds a secret message, waiting to be decoded. For an affliction of the liver, he continues, which is an organ rich in blood, we would prescribe a plant with a reddish-brown color, like the liver itself. A common treatment is to use the plant we call Hepatica, for its liver-shaped leaves. For the kidneys, which are often troubled by stones, we would use a plant like stonecrop, which has the power to break up rocks in the garden, and therefore can break up stones in the body. His confidence is absolute. This isn't just a theory for him. It's a fundamental truth about the way the world works. It's a system that finds order and purpose in the random shapes and colors of nature. He then brings the theory back to your specific case. Your condition, he says, stems from the womb, which is the center of female creativity and fertility. Therefore, we must use plants associated with fertility and growth. The seeds of the pomegranate, for instance, are numerous and vibrant. A preparation made from them can encourage a healthy, vital womb. He also mentions a concoction of herbs to be taken with wine, and we will need to address the coldness of your humor. A small amount of wine, which is a hot substance, mixed with warming herbs like pepper and ginger, will help to restore the body's natural heat and disperse the stagnant cold. This approach to medicine, based on resemblances and sympathies, will persist for centuries. It's a testament to the human desire to find patterns and meaning in the world. Modern science, of course, would eventually dismiss it as pure superstition, but occasionally, by sheer coincidence, it would. Read about Used for aches and pains because willows grow in damp places associated with achy joints. Actually contains sour-lycine, a chemical precursor to aspirin. But for every accidental success story like that, there were countless ineffective or even harmful remedies prescribed based on a poetic, but ultimately false, connection. The strangest part of this whole philosophy is its relationship with what we would call magic. Is it science? Or is it a form of ritual? Quintus would be insulted by the suggestion of magic. To him, this is pure, rational medicine based on observable signs. But the line is blurry. A folk healer might use an incantation along with the liver-shaped leaf. Quintus omits the incantation but keeps the leaf, believing its shape is a scientific indicator. To a modern observer, the underlying logic is nearly identical. As he speaks, you are struck by the sheer complexity and confidence of his system. It is a complete, self-contained world of wandering worms and talking plants. It is both utterly mad and strangely beautiful. He has an answer for everything. The problem is, you are beginning to suspect that the answers have very little to do with the reality of your own body. You are not a collection of humors and symbols. You are a person in pain. But in this room, his story is the only one that matters. Having outlined his philosophy and his intended cure, Quintus finally gives your ailment a name. He leans back, a look of diagnostic certainty on his face, and delivers the verdict. What you are experiencing, he declares, is a mild case of hystericae passio. Hystericae passio, the hysterical passion, or as it was sometimes called, the mother's fit or the suffocation of the mother. The name itself is a diagnosis, a story, and a judgment all in one. It locates the problem squarely in your womb hysteria and characterizes it as a passion or suffering, an uncontrollable event happening to you, caused by the rebellious organ within. The term feels both validating and dismissive. On the one hand, he has given your formless sake a formal, scholarly name. It is a recognized condition. You are not imagining it. You are not weak. You are suffering from a known malady. This brings a small, strange sense of relief. On the other hand, the name is steeped in the condescending theories he has just explained. It implies that your suffering is not just a physical ailment but a uniquely female one, tied to your supposed emotional and physiological instability. The name itself suggests that you are a victim of your own biology. This very diagnosis, hystericae passio, will echo through the halls of medicine for nearly 2,000 years. It will become a catch-all term for a vast array of women's health issues, from menstrual cramps and abdominal pain to anxiety, depression, and fainting spells. It will be a convenient label for any symptom in a woman that a male doctor cannot easily explain or understand. It is a diagnosis that is as much a cultural artifact as it is a medical one. And here lies a great puzzle for future historians and medical scholars. What was hystericae passio? What were the actual, underlying biological conditions that Roman physicians were observing and labeling with this term? The debate is endless, precisely because the diagnosis was so broad and the symptoms so varied. Some scholars argue that in many cases, it was likely what we would now call endometriosis, a painful condition where uterine-like tissue grows outside the uterus, causing chronic pelvic pain. The stagnation and hardness that Quintus felt when he palpated your abdomen could certainly align with the growths and inflammation associated with that disease. Others suggest it could have been pelvic inflammatory disease PID, an infection of the reproductive organs that can cause deep, persistent aching, or perhaps it was ovarian cysts, fibroids, or even certain types of cancer. The symptoms you describe, a dull, constant ache in the lower abdomen that started after a social event, could fit any of these. And some historians argue that the diagnosis wasn't always about a physical problem at all. They suggest that hystericae passio was sometimes a label for what we would now understand as anxiety disorders, panic attacks, or depression. The suffocation aspect of the diagnosis, the feeling of a lump in the throat, strongly corresponds to the physical sensations of a panic attack. In a society with rigid social constraints on women, these hysterical passions might have been one of the few socially acceptable ways for a woman to express profound psychological distress. A body in rebellion was perhaps more understandable than a mind in turmoil. The truth is, hysteric apatia was likely not one single disease, but a vast basket into which dozens of different physical and psychological conditions were thrown. The name tells us far more about the Roman understanding of the female body than it does about any specific illness. It reveals a medical mindset that saw women as fundamentally defined by their reproductive organs, and prone to mysterious ailments stemming from that single, unruly source. Quintus, of course, has no such doubts. For him, the diagnosis is clear and precise. He is not looking for endometriosis or PID. He is looking for evidence of a wandering, agitated womb, and he has found it in your story and in the feel of your abdomen. The name he has given your pain fits perfectly within his worldview. It confirms his theories. He sees the look of concern on your face. Do not be alarmed, he says, with the calm confidence of a man who believes he has all the answers. The condition is well understood, and now that we have a name for our adversary, we can fight it effectively. The examination will simply confirm the details and allow us to begin the cure. His reassurance has the opposite effect. By giving your pain a name so steeped in questionable theory, he has not brought you closer to a cure, but has instead trapped you more firmly within his strange and frightening medical universe. You are now officially a hysteric, and you must now endure the treatment prescribed for that condition. He turns back to the small table beside you, his hand reaching for the cold, gleaming bronze of the speculum. The time for talk is over. The procedure itself is a blur of cold metal, profound discomfort, and deep humiliation. Quintus is as gentle as one can be while using such an unforgiving instrument, his movements practiced and efficient. But the reality of it is inescapable. He uses the speculum to achieve his goal. A clear view of what he believes to be the source of your ailment. He murmurs observations to himself, technical terms in a mixture of Latin and Greek that you don't understand. He speaks of inflammation, unhealthy humors, and the position of the cervix. To him, it is a successful diagnostic procedure. To you, it is a violation, sanctioned by the name of science. When it is finally over, and the instrument is withdrawn, you are left with a lingering feeling of soreness and a deep, soul-crushing sense of shame. He offers you a cloth and a bowl of warm, scented water to clean yourself. You sit up on the hard couch, your body trembling slightly, and pull your tunic back on. The familiar wool has never felt so comforting, a shield to hide behind. Quintus, seemingly oblivious to your emotional state, is already moving on to the next phase. He is no longer a diagnostician. He is a dispenser of remedies. He turns to his wall of shells, a general selecting his weapons for battle. The examination confirms my diagnosis, he announces, his back to you as he selects various jars. There is indeed a hot inflammation in a cold place, a clear sign of humoral conflict. We will begin the treatment at once. He does not hand you a single remedy. Instead, he prepares a complex and multifaceted prescription, a regimen that will govern your life for the foreseeable future. Roman medicine was rarely about a single magic bullet cure. It was about a wholesale change in lifestyle, designed to slowly bring the body back into balance. First, he prepares the primary medicament. He takes a small mortar and pestle. Into it, he scrapes a bit of a dark, resinous substance from one jar. From another, he shakes out some dried, powdered leaves that have a sharp, pungent smell. He adds a pinch of a reddish mineral powder from a third. He grinds them all together, the stone pestle making a soft, gritty sound. The belief was that the combination of different ingredients created a synergistic effect, more powerful than any single substance on its own. He scoops the resulting powder onto a piece of clean papyrus, folds it neatly into a small packet, and hands it to you. This is to be mixed with a small amount of honey and water. He instructs, take it twice a day, once in the morning and once before you sleep. It is bitter, but it is necessary. It will help to cool the inflammation and purify the unhealthy humors. You take the small packet. It feels heavy in your hand, a tangible symbol of your illness and its supposed cure. What is in it? You don't dare to ask. It could be anything from common herbs like horehound or myrrh to more exotic and slightly alarming ingredients. Some Roman prescriptions called for things like powdered earthworms, burnt animal bones, or even gladiators' blood, which was thought to cure epilepsy. The line between medicine and folk magic was always blurry. Next, he addresses your diet. For the next 10 days, you will eat only cooling and moistening foods. No red meat, no peppers, no wine. You will eat boiled fish, leafy grains, cucumbers, and fruits like melon and plums. This will counteract the internal heat. This dietary advice is a cornerstone of his practice, a direct application of humoral theory to the kitchen. Finally, he prescribes rest, but a very specific kind of rest. You are to avoid all strong emotions. No anger, no excessive joy, no deep sadness. These passions stir the humors and will agitate the womb. You are to remain in the quietest part of your house, preferably the peristyle garden. Read calming poetry. Listen to gentle music. Do not concern yourself with the running of the household. Your only task is to be still. This part of the prescription, while sounding pleasant, is also a form of isolation. He is removing you from your life, from your duties and your social interactions, and placing you in a state of suspended animation. He hands you the packet of powder and a small jar of a scented oil. This oil, he says, is made with speculum. Apply it to your lower abdomen each evening. Its sweet smell is pleasing to the womb and will encourage it to remain calm and in its proper place. And that's it. You are dismissed. You are sent away not with a simple pill, but with a whole new way of living. A prescription of earth and root, of diet and emotion, of rest and scented oils. It's a holistic approach, but one based on a completely alien understanding of the body. You walk out of the examination room and back into the office, feeling dazed. Quintus is already at his desk, making notes on his scroll, his mind already moving on to the next patient. You are just one more case of hystericae passio in his long and busy day. You leave his office, collect Lyra from the waiting room, and step back out into the bright Roman sun, cutting your strange and bitter cure. The path back to health, it seems, is a long and deeply peculiar one. You emerge from the dim, sterile world of the medicus and back into the chaotic, sun-drenched reality of the street. The city seems louder, the colors brighter, the smells stronger than before. The experience inside has sharpened your senses, but also left you feeling disconnected from the vibrant life flowing around you. You are in the world, but not of it. You are now a patient, set apart by your diagnosis and your prescribed regimen. Lyra falls into step beside you. Her presence is silent comfort. She glances at the small packet in your hand, her expression carefully neutral, but you can see the question in her eyes. You say nothing. You don't have the words, or the energy, to explain the bizarre world you have just left. The world of wandering worms and talking plants. Your escorts lead the way, and the journey home begins. As you walk, the full weight of the encounter settles upon you. It's not just the physical discomfort or the emotional violation. There is a new, more practical concern emerging from the haze of your experience. The cost. Before you left the doctor's office, as you stood dazed in the small anteroom, your husband's chief financial slave, who had been waiting with your escorts, stepped forward to settle the account with the doctor's apprentice. There was a quiet exchange, the clinking of coins. You didn't see the amount, but you know it was not trivial. A consultation with a respected medicus like Quintus was a significant expense. Roman medicine was a private enterprise. There was no public health service, no insurance. Doctors were independent contractors, and they charged what the market would bear. Their fees could vary wildly. A street corner healer might charge a few small bronze coins for a solve, A famous physician attending to the emperor could become fabulously wealthy. For a household like yours, the cost of a consultation and treatment from a specialist like Quintus would likely be several silver denarii, perhaps even a gold aureus if the treatment was extensive. To put that in perspective, a single denarius was a day's wage for a skilled laborer. You have just spent the equivalent of a working man's weekly or even monthly salary. This is a fact that underscores the social reality of healthcare in Rome for the vast majority of the population. The slaves, the poor laborers, the inhabitants of the crowded insul. A doctor like Quintus was completely out of reach. Their healthcare consisted of household remedies, cheap folk magic, and perhaps a visit to a temple to pray for divine intervention. Sickness for the poor was often a death sentence, not just because of the lack of effective cures, but because of the prohibitive cost of even attempting to find one. Your family can afford it, of course. Your husband would see it as a necessary expense, an investment in the stability of his household, but the knowledge of the cost adds another layer of pressure. A price has been paid, a cure is now expected. The investment must yield a return. If you do not recover, it will not just be a personal failure, but a financial loss. This economic transaction also subtly changes the relationship between you and Quintus. He is not just a healer, he's a service provider you have hired. This seems to create a power dynamic in your favor. But the reality is more complex. His knowledge is so specialized, his art so arcane, that you are completely dependent on his expertise. You have paid for his judgment, and now you are bound to follow it. To question his methods would be to question the value of the money spent. As you walk, you pass a small, open-fronted shop where a barber is at work. In addition to cutting hair, Roman barbers often performed minor medical procedures. They were the ones people went to for pulling a tooth, lancing a boil, or even performing a quick bloodletting. This was the cheaper, more accessible end of the medical market. The barber surgeon, with his sharp razors and practical, hands-on approach, was a common sight. His services were as theoretical and much less expensive than Quintus's, but his reputation was also lower. The elite, like your family, would never dream of consulting a barber for an internal ailment. The very existence of these different tiers of healers highlights the fragmented and stratified nature of Roman healthcare. The weight of the small packet of powder in your hand seems to increase with every step. It is not just a mixture of herbs and minerals, it is a symbol of your privilege, a testament to your family's wealth, and a heavy token of the expectation of your recovery. The high price of health is not just measured in coins. It is measured in pressure, in obligation, and in the quiet, gnawing fear of a failed investment. You clutch the packet tightly, as if to protect the precious, costly hope it contains. You return to the quiet sanctuary of your domus, but the house no longer feels like the refuge it once was. It has been transformed into a place of convalescence, a private hospital where you are the sole patient. The familiar spaces are now governed by the doctor's strict regimen. The next few days pass in a slow, monotonous rhythm. In the morning, you force down the bitter powder, its earthy, medicinal taste coating your tongue. You eat the bland, cooling foods prescribed by Quintus, poached fish, cucumbers, flavorless boiled greens. The vibrant, savory tastes of your normal diet are a distant memory. At night, you dutifully anoint your abdomen with the sweet-smelling spikenard oil, the scent clinging to your skin and clothes. You spend your hours in the peristyle garden. As instructed, you sit on a stone bench, a scroll of verge and less poetry in your lap, but the words blur before your eyes. You try to remain calm, to empty your mind of all strong emotions, but it is an impossible task. Your mind is a hive of activity, buzzing with anxiety, resentment, and a deep, weary sadness. Is the ache getting better? You can't be sure. Sometimes it seems to fade. At other times it returns with a familiar, dull insistence. Your own body has become a stranger. Its signals impossible to read with any certainty. After several days of this joyless routine, with little discernible improvement, A different kind of thought begins to take root in your mind. Quintus and his science have offered one path to healing, a path of bitter herbs and cold logic. But there is another path, an older and more mysterious one. It is the path of the god. Roman religion was, for the most part, a practical, contractual affair. You made a specific offering to a specific god for a specific purpose. You did not pray for general guidance. You prayed for a successful business venture, a safe sea voyage, or victory in battle. And when it came to health, there was one god who stood above all others, Asclepius. He was originally a Greek god, a son of Apollo, whose cult had been officially imported to Rome centuries earlier during a time of great plague. His sacred sanctuary was on an island in the Tiber River, a place set apart from the hustle and bustle of the city. It was a place of healing, part temple, part hospital, part spa. People flocked there from all over, seeking miraculous cures that mortal physicians could not provide. You decide, in the quiet of your own heart, that you will go. You do not tell your husband. He is a practical, modern man who puts his faith in doctors like Quintus. He might see a trip to the temple as a sign of foolish, female superstition. So you tell him only that you wish to take a short walk for some fresh air. With Lyra as your sole companion, you slip out of the house. You make your way to the riverbank and hire a small ferryboat to take you across the short stretch of water to Tiber Island. As you approach, you can see the temple complex rising from the trees. The air here feels cleaner. The sounds of the city are muted by the flowing water. The whole island has an aura of peace and sanctity. You disembark and walk up the path towards the temple. The place is filled with other supplicates. You see a man on crutches, his face etched with pain. You see a woman with a visible, weeping sore on her arm. You see a family gathered around a pale, listless child. They are all here for the same reason. They have reached the limits of mortal help and are now placing their hope in the divine. The main feature of the sanctuary is a long, covered portico called the abaton. This is where the sick would sleep, a practice known as incubation. They believed that while they slept, the god Asclepius himself, or one of his sacred snakes, would visit them in their dreams. The dream would either cure them outright or provide a cryptic clue to the cure, which the temple priests would then help to interpret. The walls of the portico are covered in votive offerings, small plaques left by grateful patients who have been cured. They are fascinating and deeply personal. There are small, terracotta models of the afflicted body parts, a leg, an ear, a pair of eyes. There is a plaque from a man named Lucius, giving thanks for being cured of his baldness. Another from a woman named Gaia, thanking the god for the birth of a healthy son after years of infertility. These are testimonies of faith, a public record of miracles. But what did these cures actually consist of? Historians have long debated this. Some believe it was purely the power of suggestion, the placebo effect on a massive scale, the hopeful atmosphere, the powerful rituals. The deep belief in the god's power could trigger the body's own healing mechanisms. Others suggest the temple priests had a good deal of practical medical knowledge. The emphasis on rest, clean water, and healthy food in the sanctuary would have been beneficial for any number of conditions. And some of the dream prescriptions that were recorded sound suspiciously like practical medical advice. The god told me to eat more honey, or I dreamt of a fox. And the priest told me that meant I should apply a fox skin poultice. It was a seamless blend of faith and practical folk medicine. You do not plan to sleep here tonight. Your visit is a simpler one. You purchase a small, inexpensive offering, the clay model of a room, a symbolic representation of your ailment. You approach the altar at the entrance to the main temple. You light a small stick of incense, the smoke curling up towards the heavens. You close your eyes and you pray. You do not ask for a miracle. You simply ask for help. You ask for the bitter medicine to work. You ask for the ache to cease. You ask for a return to the simple, forgotten feeling of being well. It is a quiet, desperate plea, a surrender to a power greater than yourself. greater even than the confident science of your medicus. You leave your small clay offering among the hundreds of others. As you walk away from the altar and back towards the ferry, you don't feel miraculously cured, but you do feel a subtle shift inside. The hard knot of anxiety has loosened, just slightly. You have shared the burden of your illness. You have laid it at the feet of a god. Now, there is nothing left to do but wait, and hope that someone, mortal or divine, was listening. On the slow ferry ride back from the Temple Island, your mind feels calmer, the sharp edges of your anxiety softened by the quiet ritual. As you watch the familiar skyline of the city draw closer, your thoughts drift to a different kind of Roman medicine, one that has nothing to do with wandering worms or dream cures. You think about the army. Your younger brother, Lucius, is a tribune serving with a legion on the German frontier. His letters home, infrequent but treasured, paint a picture of a world utterly different from your own. It is a world of discipline, routine, and constant, grinding pragmatism, and this pragmatism extends to their medical care. The Roman army had the most organized and effective medical system in the ancient world. Every legion had its own dedicated medical staff, the medici, who were highly trained and experienced specialists. They operated out of a Valeuadianarium, a permanent military hospital built into the layout of every major fortress. These were large, well-designed buildings with clean wards, operating theaters, and even running water, a level of hygiene and organization that was unheard of in the civilian world. When you think of Quintus, with his abstract theories and his focus on internal balance, and then you think of the surgeons your brother describes, it's like comparing a philosopher to a blacksmith. The army doctors were not concerned with the four humors or the sympathetic vibrations of plants. They were concerned with results. Their patients weren't wealthy matrons with mysterious aches. They were soldiers with very specific, very visible injuries, sword cuts, spear thrusts, broken bones, infected wounds. My brother wrote about a surgeon in his legion named Marcus, a man famous for his steady hand and his no-nonsense approach. Marcus was an expert at extracting arrowheads and spear points. He had developed special tools for the purpose, like a slender bronze probe with a scoop on the end, designed to be inserted into a wound to find and remove a barbed arrowhead without causing more damage on the way out. This was problem-solving at its most visceral. The army surgeons were also masters of wound care. They understood the importance of cleaning the wound, not with magical incantations, but with wine or vinegar to disinfect it. They knew how to stitch a wound closed using fine sinew or linen thread. And they had a vast knowledge of herbal poultices to prevent infection and promote healing. They used substances like yarrow, which was known as herba militaris, the military herb, for its ability to staunch bleeding. One of the most surprising skills of the Roman military surgeon was their ability to perform amputations. In a world without modern anesthetics, this was a brutal, terrifying procedure. But it often meant the difference between life and death when a limb was mangled beyond repair. The surgeon would work with incredible speed, using a tourniquet to reduce blood loss and a sharp bone saw to sever the limb. They even had rudimentary prosthetic limbs to help the amputees regain some mobility. It was a testament to their practical, unsentimental approach to the human body. It was a machine that needed to be fixed, so it could get back to the business of fighting. And what about the strange little quirks of their practice? Army surgeons, being practical men, were also pioneers in preventative medicine. They understood that the location of a camp was crucial. The great military architect Vitruvius wrote that before building a permanent fort, a commander should let local animals graze in the area, then inspect their livers. If the livers were unhealthy, it meant the war soil was bad, and the camp should be moved. It sounds like a bizarre superstition, but it was likely a surprisingly effective way of identifying areas with contaminated water or endemic parasites. The contrast with your own medical experience is staggering. Quintus' approach is entirely internal, theoretical, and philosophical. The army doctor's approach is external, physical, and practical. Quintus treats your body like a mysterious, sealed garden whose inner harmony must be restored through diet and subtle persuasion. The army surgeon reads the body like a piece of damaged equipment that must be physically repaired. This stark difference has led historians to wonder if there were, in effect, two separate Roman medical traditions running in parallel. One, the Greek-influenced, theory-heavy medicine for the urban elite, and the other, a brutally practical, results-oriented surgical tradition forged in the crucible of the battlefield. The two rarely seem to overlap. You would never call an army surgeon for a case of hysteric abscess, and you would never ask a philosopher-physician like Quintus to set a compound fracture. As you step off the ferry and back onto the familiar ground of the city, you feel a strange sense of envy for the soldiers on the frontier. Their lives were harsh and dangerous, but their medical problems were, at least, straightforward. A cut is a cut. A bone is broken. The remedy is direct and visible. Your own ailment feels like a fog, an invisible enemy being fought with invisible weapons. You would almost prefer the sharp, honest pain of a surgeon's knife to the endless, uncertain waiting of your own gentle, esoteric cure. The visit to the temple marks a subtle turning point. It's not that you suddenly believe Quintus is wrong or that the gods will provide an instant miracle. It's that you have broadened your portfolio of hope. You are now fighting your ailment on two fronts, the scientific and the spiritual, and somehow, this division of labor makes the burden easier to bear. You continue to follow the doctor's regimen, but with a new sense of calm. The bitter morning medicine no longer feels like a punishment, but a necessary ritual. The bland, cooling foods are no longer a deprivation, but a part of a gentle, cleansing process. You spend your long, quiet hours in the peristyle garden not with a mind racing with anxiety, but with a quiet sense of patience. You have done everything you can. You have followed the doctor's orders. You have made your offering to the god. The outcome is no longer entirely in your hands. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, something begins to change. One morning, about a week after your visit to the temple, you wake up and for the first few moments of consciousness, you feel nothing. The familiar, low-grade ache, the constant companion of your days and nights, is absent. You lie perfectly still, listening to your body, half expecting it to return. It doesn't. There is just a quiet, peaceful emptiness where the pain used to be. You get out of bed, moving cautiously, as if a sudden movement might shatter the fragile truce. You walk to the atrium. You stand by the impul watching the morning light pour down from the open roof. The ache is still gone. In its place, there is a faint, ghost-like memory of the pain, a tenderness, but the active, insistent throb has vanished. A wave of relief so profound it makes you dizzy washes over you. You want to shout, to laugh, to run and tell someone, but you restrain yourself, remembering Quintus' warning against strong emotions. Instead, you simply stand there, breathing in the cool morning air, a slow, silent smile spreading across your face. Over the next few days, your strength begins to return. The paleness in your cheeks is replaced by a healthy flush. The bland food starts to taste good again. Your interest in the world beyond the garden walls rekindles. You find yourself actually reading the scroll of poetry in your lap. The epic tales of heroes and gods no longer just a blur of ink. What was it that cured you? This is a question that will never have a definitive answer. Was it Quintus's medicine? Perhaps the concoction of herbs and minerals he gave you contained a compound that genuinely had an anti-inflammatory or analgesic effect. Many plants used in ancient medicine do have active biochemical properties. It's entirely possible that his strange prescription, for all its flawed reasoning, contained a lucky, effective ingredient. Was it the diet and rest? Absolutely. The regimen he prescribed, forcing you to rest and eat simple, easily digestible foods, would be beneficial for almost any number of inflammatory or digestive conditions. By removing the stresses of a rich diet and a busy social life, He gave your body the time and resources it needed to heal itself. This is a principle that modern medicine still recognizes. Was it the visit to the temple, the power of belief? What future centuries will call the placebo effect is a potent force. The ritual, the hope, the act of surrendering your anxiety to a higher power. All of this could have triggered a genuine physiological response, reducing stress hormones and allowing your immune system to function more effectively. Or was it simply the natural course of the illness? Many ailments are self-limiting. The body's own defenses eventually overcome the problem. Perhaps the ache would have faded on its own, regardless of the bitter powders, the spikenard oil, or the prayers to Asclepius. You simply happened to be doing all these things when the recovery began. This is the great, unanswerable question at the heart of so much of medical history. When a patient recovered after a treatment, was it because of the treatment or in spite of it? For you, the question is academic. The only thing that matters is the result. The shadow has lifted, the balance has been restored. You even find yourself thinking of Quintus with a certain grudging respect. His theories might have been bizarre, his methods invasive, but he projected an aura of absolute confidence. He gave you a plan, a structure, a sense of control in a chaotic situation. And, in the end, you got better. In the Roman world, that was the only measure of a good doctor. His reputation as a healer, you realize, is built on a foundation of recoveries just like this one. A complex and ultimately unknowable cocktail of effective if misunderstood medicine, the healing power of rest, the potent force of belief, and the simple, mysterious resilience of the human body. As the days turn into another week, the memory of your illness begins to recede, like a shoreline shrinking in the wake of a departing ship. The return to normal life is gradual, a series of small, delightful reclamations. The first time you taste wine again is a revelation. After weeks of water and bland herbal infusions, the small, watered-down cup your husband offers you at the evening meal tastes like nectar. The warmth spreads through your chest. A pleasant, familiar sensation that you now appreciate in a way you never did before. You begin to resume your duties as the mistress of the domus. You walk through the house, no longer a patient confined to the garden, but its rightful commander. You inspect the pantry, consult with Lyra about the meals, and oversee the work of the weaving slaves. These routine tasks, which once felt like a burden, now feel like a privilege. They are the scaffolding of your life, and you are grateful to have them back. The fear and anxiety that had become your constant companions start to fade into the background. The world no longer seems like a place filled with hidden dangers and lurking ailments. It is simply the world again, a place of sunlight and shadow, work and rest, joy and minor irritations. The most striking change is how you view the memory of the doctor's office, the stark examination room, the gleaming bronze tools, the profound sense of violation. It all starts to feel less like a sharp, traumatic memory and more like a strange and vivid dream you once had. The edges blur. The intense emotions soften. When you think of Quintus, you no longer feel the same potent mix of fear and resentment. Instead, you see him as a character in the story, a strange and serious man with his bizarre theories and his intimidating, but ultimately effective, methods. The memory of the speculum, once a source of cold dread, now seems almost abstract. A fascinating, unterrible object from a life that is no longer yours. This psychological distancing is a natural and necessary part of healing. The mind protects itself, softening the sharpest corners of traumatic experiences, filing them away in a place where they can be observed without being relieved. You find you can even talk about it now, at least in a limited way. One afternoon, sitting in the garden with a close friend, you find yourself describing the experience. You don't go into the most humiliating details, but you describe the doctor's strange theories. He told me my womb was wandering. You say, a small, ironic smile playing on your lips. Your friend nods, her expression one of complete seriousness. Ah, yes, my aunt had that. They treated her with foul-smelling fumigation-s. It was dreadful. You realize that your bizarre, deeply personal experience is, in fact, a commonplace one for women of your class. The wandering room, the humoral theories, the cooling diets, this is simply the shared language of female illness. By turning your private ordeal into a shared story, you rob it of its power to isolate you. It becomes just another strange chapter in the book of being a woman in Rome. You also notice a curious detail about your own household. The little package of leftover medicinal powder, which you had left on a shelf in your cubiculum, has disappeared. You ask Lyra about it. She gives you an uncommittal shrug. Perhaps it was thrown out during cleaning. My lady, you have a strong suspicion that Lyra, with her practical wisdom and her distrust of overly complicated theories, disposed of it herself. Believing that good food and peace of mind were the real cures, you don't press the issue. Perhaps she is right. Historians often face this challenge when studying the past. The official record, written by men like Quintus, is filled with theories and prescribed treatments. But the lived reality, the quiet acts of skepticism more non-compliance by patients and their caregivers, is almost always lost to time. The story of what was supposed to happen is preserved, while the story of what actually happened often vanishes without a trace. Your life has returned to its familiar rhythm. The ache is gone, the fear is gone. The whole episode is beginning to feel like a story you might tell about someone else. The sharp, terrifying reality of the doctor's cold room has been replaced by the warm, living reality of your own home. Your own life, the dream, or the nightmare, is finally over. The final layer of the experience settles into place one evening. Some weeks later, you are once again at a banquet, reclining on a couch in a brightly lit triclinium. The air is filled with the murmur of conversation, the clinking of wine cups, and the scent of roasted meat and exotic spices. It is a scene almost identical to the one where your ordeal began. But this time, everything is different. You are not just a passive observer, performing a social duty. You are an active participant, savoring every moment. The food doesn't just have taste, it has a richness and complexity that you had forgotten. You take a small bite of a fig stuffed with spiced nuts, and the sweetness explodes on your tongue. It's a simple, profound pleasure. The conversation around you is no longer a source of anxiety, a series of social traps to be navigated. It's a warm, human current that you are happy to float upon. You laugh at a joke told by the man reclining next to you, a genuine, unforced laugh that comes from a place of deep contentment. You look around the room at the other guests, at their faces animated in the flickering lamplight. You see the signs of life, of health, in all of them, the flush on a woman's cheek, the strong gesture of a man's hand, the bright clarity in their eyes. These are things you would never have noticed before. Now, they seem like small, precious miracles. The experience of being ill, and of being healed, has given you a new lens through which to see the world. It is a lens of gratitude. You are not grateful for the pain or the fear, but you are profoundly grateful for its absence. You have been given back the simple, unremarkable gift of feeling well, and it now seems like the most remarkable gift of all. This is a quiet, internal transformation. No one else at the party can see it. To them, you are simply as you have always been, but you know that you are different. You have traveled to a strange and frightening country, the land of the sick, and you have returned, and like any traveler to a foreign land, you have come back changed. You think, for a moment, of the vast, complex web of things that brought you to this point, the skill and strange theories of Quintus, the loyalty of Lyra, the quiet power of your own body's resilience, the mysterious comfort of a prayer whispered at a temple. All of these threads, visible and invisible, woven together to bring you back to this couch, in this room, sipping this wine. It is a mystery that you will never fully understand. The host calls for more wine. A slave comes forward with a large amphora, and the sweet, Dark liquid splashes into your cup. You take a sip. You feel the warmth of the room, the solid support of the couch beneath you, the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. You feel the simple, profound, and now exquisitely precious sensation of being completely, uncomplicated lie, wonderfully well. This, you realize, is what it's all about. This is the goal of all the strange theories, the frightening instruments, the bitter medicines, and the desperate prayers. It is all in service of this single, quiet, and perfect moment, a moment of peace, a moment of balance, a moment of gratitude for the silent, beautiful music of a body at ease with itself. The story of your illness is over. The story of your life, viewed through new and more appreciative eyes, can now continue. You settle back on the couch, a feeling of deep and lasting peace settling over you like a soft, warm blanket. And so, the quiet journey of this Roman woman, from a flicker of discomfort to the deep, resonant peace of recovery, comes to its gentle end. Her story, with its strange beliefs and its timeless fears, now fades, leaving behind only the stillness of the present moment. You can feel that stillness around you now, a soft and welcoming quiet. You have walked with her through the noisy streets of Rome, stood with her in the sterile quiet of the doctor's room, and felt her relief as health returned like the morning sun. Her trials are over, and now, yours are too. The day is done. There is nothing left for you to do, nothing left to consider. You can simply allow this feeling of peace, this gratitude for simple wellness, to be your own. Let it be the soft ground upon which you drift, effortlessly, into a deep and restorative sleep. Our narrative has reached its peaceful end. It's okay if you're still here with me. Feel free to press play on another journey, or simply enjoy this deep and comfortable quiet. For now, sleep well. Good night.